put two and two. When you promised we'd be together, you, me, forever. Now there's nothing left to lose. And though I understand it's hard sometimes to make up your mind in these trying times, yeah, I just can't accept you leaving me when I'm overseas with the heart so heavy. Think that I deserve the truth for once, not a guilty tone, 'cause you're not alone, yeah. You said you wanna come home, but I know you don't. So this time I won't hear it on the phone. If you got something to say to me, then say it to my face. What it's all about, why you're bailing out. Think you owe me an apology. Just say it to my face. You're sorry. You're so sorry. You're so sorry. You're so sorry. Say it to my face. You're sorry.
Join our membership program, sign up, find out what's going on, become a patron, and support our work. We're doing these amazing virtual live streams covering events, marches, protests, and actions that mainstream media just isn't covering.
A lot of these very common sense policy interventions aren't given the space they need.
You know, the truth is, before we have the political revolution, we need a media revolution.
We really see this opening in the media space with television transitioning to the internet in particular. Streaming platforms, Netflix, Hulu, etc., are the next frontier.
And we're not mainstream media. You're not getting a 10-second clip and a very watered down, whitewashed version of what's going on.
Having a media company to support these kind of movement efforts is extremely valuable.
People want to talk to us because they know that we're talking to the people.
We need a dedicated, empowered, honorable base of people who are willing to fight for what they believe in.
This needs
In contrast, Russian elections are rigged. Political opponents
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show.
Good morning. Welcome to another edition of the Benjamin Dixon Show. Obviously, not Benjamin Dixon. I'm Diction. I'm Noah Changa. Happy Friday. Last Friday, it was Friday the 13th, and it was an auspicious day because the teen boy did actually get his license, if you were tuning in last Friday when I was co-hosting. So he's been riding and whipping around about town, and I had to remind him that gas is over $4 a gallon here in the Atlanta metro area. You might look up if you see $3.89 or so, but how many of you are actually paying for your gas in cash? Because it really annoys me when you have the little, like, more mom and pop. And I understand folks are trying to make their buck however they can. There might even be some other transactional things that cause them to have the difference in price between cash and a debit card or a credit card. But once upon a time, cash and debit used to be charged as cash, and now debit's charged as credit. So I don't know. It's just one of my little pet peeves. It's small business. It's time to support small businesses, but you're charging me a little bit extra at the pump than the QT or the racetrack down the block. So I don't know what to do about that right now. That's my little just like mom moment, because having a car and sharing with teenagers, young adults, and, folks who we're supporting through school and stuff, it's like, y'all need to get some jobs because gas is expensive. And I know you trying to go places and I'm trying to go places, but it's putting a hurting on my pocket. And I know that we just saw legislation move forward out of Congress. Amazing that legislation actually moved forward out of Congress, right? Out of the Senate in particular, around baby formula. And hopefully there will actually be relief soon for parents of young babies, of infants who are relying on formula. And folks can get into the whole, well, you ought to be breastfeeding anyway. Breastfeeding is not as easy as people make it out to be. One, if you had a blessed, angels and, breastfeeding, lactation support and all, good for you. Congratulations, boo-boo. Not everybody has access to all the support in the world, right? Not everybody can afford to buy all the breast pads. Not everybody gets a breast pump. You can get a breast pump sometimes through WIC, but there's a lot of judgment about whose work and time is valuable and what support people do and don't get. And we really need to think about that when we're talking about, especially when people are in tight conditions, what they ought to be doing anyway. You ought to just mind your own business. How about that? I breastfed, and actually this isn't what I even want to talk about, but I just thought about it because of the formula, the formula crisis that's been happening. I remember when my niece, she's adorable. She should actually come host someday. She's rather entertaining when she's not watching Blippi, but when she was a baby, she's almost 3. When she was a baby, the formula that she had to get, because she had I think an iron deficiency or something like that, which is a little bit more expensive. And while, you might look at one canister and it's like, oh, it's not that expensive, but different formulas. So if it's already more expensive and you have to use maybe a little bit more of it than like a cheaper brand, then you're actually paying more over a longer period of time. And if you're on a fixed income, if you're a little bit squinched, my sister and her husband have been a little squinched by the economic times, like a lot of us have, that starts to add up. So as a family, we've all pitched in and bought formula from time to time. We've all pitched in and bought diapers to help out with the new little one. Also, like I said, because, being here in this pandemic moment, it has been tight. So to sit here open and fix your mouth, tell people they ought to be breastfeeding. My sister, unfortunately, was not able to breastfeed because of just difficulty, trying to get the latch. I mean, not all babies latch on the same way. It can be very frustrating. So don't be out here telling young mothers, new mothers, previous mothers, like folks might already be beating themselves up over whether they're breastfeeding or not. I mean, I breastfed with my first child. easy peasy. She was simple. I got a breast pump from WIC because I was in school. Easy peasy. Was going to breastfeed with my second child. It was a lot more difficult for various reasons. And, sometimes you feel bad about yourself when your body don't work the way you're told it ought to. So just shut your mouth about what people ought to be doing. Hopefully, there'll be formula on the shelves for folks really soon. And kudos to Congress or the Senate anyway, for actually getting its act together on something that matters. I wish they could get their act together on some other things. Anyway, I have an amazing guest today. I am joined by someone who, I always talk to really cool people. So, but Pam is one of the people I have the best conversations with about very real stuff. Now, if you ever saw any of my older commentary, you know that I could be critical of progressives as well. Liberals, Democrats, whomever, they definitely deserve to get it. Republicans, damn sure going to get it. I don't know if I can say damn on Friday morning on ACT TV, but I just said damn. Oops. But progressives within our own spaces, there are things that we need to address and deal with and figure out, not just how we are shifting and changing, but also really reflecting, right? Just because we might be right on issues doesn't mean that the tactics that we're using, that the way we're going about it is necessarily the right way. And Pam is someone that I've been able to ideate and talk through about these things. So one thing that I think is really amazing that Pam has been working on is organizing around veterans and national security and peace from a progressive lens. And this is an area that I have personally avoided because national security, foreign policy is not my thing. But having these conversations with Pam and just really why we can't no longer cede ground on these conversations and topics, it was wow, a breath of fresh air. So not exactly what we're going to talk about today, but I was really, grateful when she agreed to, hop on at 8 something in the morning to chop it up with us. So Pam, good morning. How are you doing today?
Good morning. I am here. I'm grateful to be with you and also trying to make sense of this world that we're living in. So yeah. Excited to be here.
Pam is, like I said, Pam does a lot of work on disinfo, national security, peace, and throws down with the WFP, Working Families Party. And so when we were talking a couple nights ago about the onslaught of attacks on candidates soon to be, I'm still not sure. I guess I'll find out at 11:30 what the update is when I interview her, but soon to be Congresswoman Summer Lee and just, several other candidates. There were millions and millions of dollars spent against them. And they were depicted as, almost being anti-American. Pam, you sent me a message, watching the return, just watching the reactions, and just you were processing through some of the way in which certain organizations were actively working against them. Now we know that people do run different ads. We attack, folks when they're running, they might attack opponents, they might run dirty, but there's something that's different about what was happening with Summer and other candidates. Can you talk to me a little bit about what you were observing and why it did not sit right with you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'll say a little bit. So for background, I enlisted in the military out of high school and found myself doing counterterrorism intelligence work. And it's constantly fascinating. The thing that has put me in this field is how we continue to define or not define matters of security in the United States. And it's constantly from a frankly white supremacist and extremely patriarchal lens. And what I think is really interesting is we're living in a moment, and it's been several years of building momentum around this. But over the last few years, Black and brown liberatory movements and forces, progressive forces, have been forcing a conversation around transparency and accuracy, frankly, of what is human rights in the United States and abroad, right? Particularly, I think, since the uprising, we, as, the progressive left, I think, have really been forcing that conversation around accountability of the United States, right? Here at home, how are we accountable to ensuring that we're not going to continue to see the killing of Black lives by state forces? And likewise, how are we, the United States, complicit in the killing or oppression by state forces of lives abroad, right? And what is really interesting is that more than ever, we're seeing more Black and brown, justice-oriented, progressive champions like Summer Lee that are not only unafraid to speak truth to power, but are popular in their position because they are bringing to Congress not only a beautiful truth telling to them, but a commitment to the working class and a time where we're in a working class power struggle. And so politics has been dirty since its inception. But what's really interesting now and dangerous, right? What is dangerous now is just seeing the amount of money, resources that lobby groups are funneling against candidates like Summer Lee, particularly because they pose a threat to a status quo that would force us to actually make the structural changes we need to, let's say, put conditions on one of the United States' closest partners, Israel, to stop abuse of human rights against Palestinians, right? Would a Summer Lee be a threat in Congress to police unions? Absolutely, right? And so the thing that is most alarming to me is how money in politics and, frankly, toxic actors in politics are trying to outmaneuver democracy, right, by pouring money. And frankly, how is the money being used? The money is being used to slander and smear Black and brown women in particular, running on those kinds of agendas as not being a Democrat, which to me is a skip and a throw away from basically calling someone not an American, right? It's the same playbook. And it's important for us to connect the dots between, dangerous political tactics that do that to candidates that are, a Black woman who's working class running on truth, and then not seeing how that disinformation could put that person's life at risk, whether on the campaign trail or when they go into office.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think what you said right there at the end too about, this being almost akin to calling someone, or a stone's throw from calling someone un-American or not a real American. I mean, when you're talking about a district that is a heavily Democratic district, I mean, in this case, the primary is essentially their general election, right? There is no real serious Republican takeover that could possibly happen in that particular district. So you're right. So when you're going at this person's not really even a Democrat, because that there is a certain segment of the Democratic voter base that does resonate with, because that is a part of their identity and they want to make sure they're good Democrats and they're voting for the good person or whatever. It also is interesting because while it's not always a white candidate that is doing that is being backed when this is happening, we've seen this in North Carolina. There was a Black woman that was running, and I forget the other sister, but I think, we saw this happening against other POC candidates too, right? Even when the preferred candidate is of color as well. So we see this attack being labeled, but ultimately what's happening is this, this is the good one that gets in line and does what we want them to do. Whether that person, and I'm not saying that individuals themselves, I mean, Steve Irwin can kick rocks in my opinion. Just watching a clip of him from March talking about Summer's candidacy. I mean, there's a lack of care and concern with the way they even describe and talk about us when we don't fit into a certain box. But I think what you were sharing with me, though, about how this actually falls into, when we're talking about disinformation and the framings, because it makes me think of something else. I think it was Brandy Collins Dexter, who's a disinfo expert and used to be with Color Change, was saying that, Shireen Mitchell also, I think, has said the same thing, that disinformation is not even so much that it has to be absolutely a false thing that's being said. It's also the framing and the way in which the information is being, curtailed or channeled or projected to the audience to give a particular narrative that isn't actually itself true, right? So the narrative untruth versus like whether or not the specific facts are untrue. And so I really appreciate the way you were kind of injecting that. Like, what should we be doing when we're seeing like candidates and we're seeing this type of thing happening? Because like these are candidates that are being, attacked with like millions. It's a lot of money that is going specifically just to attack these candidates. And in some instances, when you're looking at like the PAC associated with AIPAC, you're looking at entities that have no problem supporting anti-democracy Republicans. I think it was over 100 of them that were supported by the same PAC that was simultaneously tearing down, Summerlee and other folks running for Congress.
Yeah. I mean, it's really concerning because the mainstreaming, first of all, the mainstreaming of disinformation and propagandizing as a political tactic has become so unhinged and so uncontained, particularly by Democrats, because the reality is, and this is like hard to say, and I get so annoyed because I'm like, this is the reality, and we can't be so fragile as to not face this head on. We are in a major and dangerous power struggle where one of the two, duopoly parties is actively ensuing an assault, using disinformation, targeting our communities, right? We know that they're specifically targeting Black and Brown voters, particularly male voters, that they can peel off, using conspiracy theories and disinformation in ways that we know foreign actors have also done to undermine our democracy as part of a coordinated, right, far-right use of political violence to push forward their agenda and take power. That is happening and has been happening. National security experts, have been saying this for several years. But what I find it fascinating is how the unresolved white supremacy culture of the Democratic establishment is countering that with more disinformation, with more counter-narrative spin, because there's a disrespect of our base. There's a fundamental continual disrespect that our voters don't know enough. So we're just going to have to trick them into not picking, certain candidates so that we can consolidate and continue to keep corporate establishment power. And it's getting messier because I see the establishment using diversity, equity, and inclusion as part of that disinformation, which is extremely harmful and has been part of their tokenistic strategy. And I think more than ever, I know that we say this on and on and on, but organizing in the way, I wish somebody out there had the resources and bandwidth to actually peel back the layers. And if all of that money had not been deployed, all of those nefarious money and tactics and influential actors deployed against Summerlee, what would be her true win numbers? What would Summerlee's true win numbers be? Because the fact that we're still like, oh, we're not sure if she did win, if the votes were counted, right? This is going to continue to undermine our electoral system, which is already hanging by a thread because of the attacks that we've endured. And so there is a enormous need for the left to aggressively mobilize wealth. And when I talk about the progressive left, white progressives and liberals have the most responsibility. And yet, from what I've seen with Love, not the organization or the commitment that has been required over the last 5 to 3 years, right? Or even the last year. Just seeing the mobilization around the SCOTUS leak, to me, is one clear indicator from a national security perspective. When I just think about civil society and grassroots activation against, responding to the collapse of our democratic institutions, we all need to be real that mobilization it felt like we don't have the gas. because we don't have the resources, because we don't have the leadership. And so I think that there's a real serious contention where we need to mobilize wealth to fund civil society and grassroots organizing, because it is amazing the organizing feat that campaign, the Summer League campaign, did to organize as aggressively as it did across so many different places that, traditional pundits said that we can't win. We can't win on a message of Medicare for all. We can't win. It's a lie. It's a lie, and it's scarcity thinking, and it's small thinking in the face of crisis. And so I believe that progressives cannot risk getting in our own power struggle because of white supremacy culture in progressive spaces that oftentimes feeds into a disbelief that Black and brown women are doing exactly what needs to be done in order to organize and say the things that need to be said. I'm worried that that's definitely something that I see I'm still seeing people say, oh, well, Brittany Ramos de Barros, who, is a friend and an anti-war movement leader, a veteran running in New York 11, a woman who has run a campaign for over a year, who has organized one of the most robust grassroots, multi-faith, intergenerational coalitions in Staten Island that has happened in years, with the help of local leaders. And people are still saying, well, I don't think she can win against Max Rose, who frankly has not shown any of the leadership credentials or frankly, even a full analysis of the crisis of the moment. And so these comparatives that I think are based in a continual kind of, hinged white supremacy and patriarchal kind of culture in politics is a liability to us being able to decisively win against some of these destructive attacks, particularly disinformation that targets our communities.
I think that's a good place to shift quickly before we wrap up in this conversation, because I could just talk to Pam, and I do talk to Pam sometimes for long stretches of time. But something else happened, I think, yesterday, and it got put on the radar by you. George W. Bush telling on himself. Just telling on himself. David, guys, do we have a clip of the former president of Junior talking about his yeah.
In contrast, Russian elections are rigged. Political opponents are imprisoned or otherwise eliminated from participating in the electoral process. The result is an absence of checks and balances in Russia and the decision of one man to launch a wholly unjustified and brutal invasion of of Ukraine. Iraq, anyway. 75.
Yeah, so Iraq and Ukraine, totally the same place. Pam, what are your thoughts just seeing the former president's gaffe slip up in this moment?
Before I was 23, I deployed twice by myself.
In contrast,
elections are rigged. In support of Iraq and Afghanistan. And when I heard this clip, it's hard to really vocalize the rage that I felt, not only for the admission, but for the laughter that came from the audience. For the laughter that came in such a horrible truth, because ultimately what he is saying, let's be very clear, it's really easy, right, to say, look at that bad man Putin doing this genocidal war. But we need to, he admitted subconsciously to doing the same thing, because then he says, anyway, Iraq too. So not only does he make the gaffe of mixing it up, but he admits essentially to yep, Iraq too, which was him. And then he moves on, people laugh. And then he says, I'm 75, rationalizing his gaffe. And to me, I just am sitting here being like, the impunity of war criminality at the highest level. This is a man who has been rehabilitated by countless political actors across the spectrum who, painted pictures of disabled veterans, as part of his rehabilitation, and now is laughing about it. It felt very Hunger Games to me. And the biggest thing is, the more that people reveal themselves, the more it will radicalize, countless working class people that cannot continue to tolerate, frankly, the corruption of politicians at the highest levels that leads to death. So, as intense as that may sound, that's what I heard in that gaffe. It's important for us to really hold the magnitude of what happened in that moment that is constantly normalized by, frankly, an elite class that laughs away the genocide of our people.
Yeah, I just thinking about what you were just saying about just even the laughter, right? And the way this is normalized. It makes me think of a book by Maha Halal, Innocent and So Proven Muslim. And I recently did a review of it, and just really learning and understanding about how empire protects itself across 3 administrations. I mean, we're now, we saw the withdrawal from Afghanistan happening under, beginning of the Biden administration. So it doesn't cover that far, but just really looking the 20 years of the war on terror. And so really understanding the rehabilitation that has happened of George Bush, particularly through his friendship, I guess, with Michelle Obama, as this sweet, old man, like you were saying, he's like, well, I'm just 75. But what does that matter when we're talking about the response and, your admission about, your own basically, actions that involve an entire nation state and another entire group of people. I think there's some ways in which, other folks like Henry Kissinger, there are these older figures that are allowed to exist without any type of impunity. Just as we're wrapping up, Pam, what should people understand about getting involved or being more aware of peace and security? Apologies, y'all. The dog broke in my office and she keeps running back and forth. But I'm not sure if you can hear her or not. But I'm like, oh my God. But just thinking, as we're wrapping up, Pam, more about just broader. What should we really be kind of paying attention to? Because there's so much that pulls our attention. And we might feel like we're being pulled in so many different directions. I have so much to focus on, but this type of stuff, and actually being, if not present in rooms like this, at least being present in conversations. How should people get started? Going about doing that, or what should people be looking at or supporting?
Yeah, the first thing that I always say is that all of it is connected, and it has been a myth and a lie that, the working class just doesn't understand national security and foreign policy. We intimately do understand. They just make it extra complicated. And I think, right now, my main project is helping build the party of our dreams. The 2-party system is continually showing that it has exhausted its limits. And frankly, this bipartisanship, right? When I hear about, Michelle Obama and Bush's friendship, part of me is like, okay. And from a position of power, we can no longer continue to negotiate with bad faith actors and not hold them accountable, whether that's the GOP or Israel or Saudi Arabia or the police union that continues to lynch Black people, right, in places like Buffalo. And we must feel empowered as a community and as a movement to know that we are not only on the right side of freedom, but we have the answers for a much better peace and security that breaks down the wall between the international and the domestic, right? I see a future where we're organizing across continents, right, in order to actually face the security threats we do need, right? Which is not scary Black and brown people in power that's going to change the system, but the threats of climate change and and the next pandemic that is going to come, because it is going to come, and housing insecurity, and the fact that we have GOP people out here that don't want to give formula to undocumented people, right? And banning books. And so as scary as these times are and as big as the system and the problems seem, we are on the right path. We are winning momentum. Victories like Summer Lee's prove that we don't have to compromise on our values, right? We do have to organize aggressively. And so, I encourage people to look at the Working Families Party as a vehicle to organize on this battleground. It's a big imperative of ours to ensure that we're bringing this analysis to our work so that we can actually build the kind of power we need. And there are incredible organizations, one that I think is really doing a lot of great work that does a lot of good education for anyone that wants to learn more about these issues is Grassroots Global Justice. They're an incredible organization that really connects these dots. And so it's on all of us to do the work to inform ourselves, inform our families, and our children, because we can do this. I really believe that we can build a different way. It's just about not letting the disinformation take the hold. Are you there?
Appreciate it. Thank you so much, Pam, for joining me this morning. I hope you feel better and get some rest over the weekend. And this has been me, Anoa Changa, standing in for Benjamin Dixon on the Benjamin Dixon Morning Show. If you'd like to see more of my work, you can check it out at newsone.com. I write a bunch of stuff for News One. I talk my stuff over there. Shout out to the team. And I might have more content for you a la Ben's channel next week. I don't know. We'll see. Appreciate the team so much for helping me do all the things this week, and appreciate y'all for tuning in, even though I am not the Benjamin Dixon. So I'm going to kick it back over to David and Dwayne and everyone on the back end, and I will see you hopefully again soon. Peace.
Check out Anoa Changa. She's amazing.
Thank you, guys. Oh, I'm still here. Hi.
There we go.
Radio personality Lisa Moy is an old friend and colleague from KMOJ. In this exclusive interview, she talks candidly about Go's diversity, claims of cultural appropriation, and why she didn't get bumped up to the morning show when Sophia Aris left the station.
When you first heard that Go was being sold, where were you at, and what was your emotional response to hearing that?
Wow, like this is like people's lives, that are just hanging in like, what are they going to do? So, and they're my friends, some of them are my friends. And so I feel you're super connected with them in that way. Like, what's the next step for them? It's heartbreaking. And then you lose something that people loved and it brought entertainment to people. And, from being on the radio, you have people calling you and they say, I was having the worst day, but I heard your voice or you said something that made me smile or made me keep going. There's a lot of people who looked at Go for that, to look not just for the music, but the people, the personalities. They created connections with these people that they felt like they knew them. So it's just kind of like a breakup. I saw somebody say, I feel like Go 95.3 leaving is like my boyfriend breaking up with me. It feels like a breakup because it's a loss, definitely for the city and definitely for the people who were working on that station.
Did you consider the staff like a diverse group of people?
So that's so funny. Yes, I say yes. It's came up before. It's been brought up before. How
in what ways?
In ways like I've heard through the grapevine, in the streets. I've heard, Go, how can they talk about hip hop, or how can this be a hip hop station where there's no one Black on the station, or there's not enough Black representation on the station. And so I thought about that today while I was in the shower, and I just went down a list of like the people that were there when I was there. And I feel like there were diversity. I feel like, we had myself, a black woman, Sophia Harris, a mixed race woman.
Yeah.
We had Tone, who was Native American and black. We had Bonix, who was Asian. We had Augie, who was Hispanic. We had Pete, who's Caucasian. Like, we had, you know, diversity in the station, but did we have enough black personalities, maybe, on-air personalities? No. Do we have a lot of women personalities? No. So when you say diversity, I want to say yes, but then also when you kind of break it down, maybe not as much as people would have liked to see. You know what I'm saying? Because it's a hip hop station. But then I think about hip hop and I think of how inclusive hip hop is to everyone. And so I did like the fact that we did have a lot of different backgrounds, different nationalities, but I do understand some people saying that we needed to have a more black representation. I understand that.
Do you think that played a role in the station's ability to connect with the community?
Absolutely. Oh yeah, absolutely. Most definitely. People want to relate to someone that looks like them, I feel. People want to hear from people that look like them. And if you don't look like them and you're speaking about issues that may not seem to concern you because of what you look like, that could be damaging to some. Some might feel like you don't have the expertise to speak on things or talk to my community because you don't look like what my community looks like. And so I think it did have a barrier for connection with the community. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, and I think about how many individuals in this market are transplants.
Yeah.
From California, Detroit, Atlanta, New York, where you have traditional urban stations that are predominantly black, if not exclusively, and are rocking from 6 a.m. to 6 a.m.
Yeah.
And so to come here and see the leading urban station be led by predominantly white or white passing people could be considered cultural appropriation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're right. You're definitely right. It is. It can be. I think that's another reason why it didn't last so long. You know, because people say, well, it was a wide open market for hip hop. Yeah, it is a wide open market for hip hop, but you definitely want to make sure you have to be careful with that. Because like I said, the personalities may have been diverse, but the bosses weren't. And the people who were making all the major decisions were not. And so people look at that and people don't like that. So, and I understand, being a black woman, I understand that. I definitely get it. And coming from a station that was predominantly black, I definitely get it. Where the bosses was black and the board was black and the people writing my check was black, you know. So it's definitely different, and I can see how people would be disconnected or upset about a hip hop station being in Minnesota that was not black owned or black higher ups being black. I can understand that.
And having radio experience myself in understanding the demographics of this market, if you have 30% African American and 70% Caucasian, you have a bigger pie to tap into if you're catering to a white audience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which could drive music choice, your modern hip hop.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of pop music that was integrated into the programming.
Yeah.
So what is the intent? Is the intent to truly display the hip hop culture, or was the intent to cater to 70% white demographics?
Try to get that market. Try to get those
business.
It is business. To be. So for B96, a totally different entity supposedly than Go 95.3, even though it was the same people, company. You know, just different names changed. I just think that they were, I would say, in my opinion, that hip hop was never their, was never something that they were wanting to go in that lane. I feel, you know, from it being B96. I think it was even one time like K-Twin or something like that, to just hip hop. I want to say, in my opinion, that it never meant to be hip hop. That's what I think. I think it just, they saw something that they could probably get into and they got into it. But I don't think that they set out to be a hip hop station. I think they would prefer to have been like a top 40 type of a station.
Yeah. I was curious. So let me ask you this. So when Sophia Eris, it looked like she had done some touring with Lizzo, and so she was kind of chiming in remote, and then that faded out, and then we didn't hear her anymore. Yeah. And so as a radio chick, I was like, yeah, they should bump Lisa into that spot. Yeah. Why didn't that happen?
Oh, girl, I think they should have bumped me into that spot too. Why didn't that happen? I think it did not happen because I think they didn't want to put in the dollars. I don't think that they wanted to invest the money for another morning show person.
Did you guys have the conversation?
Oh, of course. That was my opportunity. I'm not going to just, you know, it was open. I do radio. Why wouldn't I want to go from weekend to a major day part? That's where I come from. So, yeah, of course, I had conversations, and we talked about it a number of times. And the answer that I would always get back was, you know, we want to see how things go without Sophia being on right now. We want to see what Augie can do. We want to see how our numbers shift. We don't want to make too many big changes. You know, you get that. Or let's build you up for, you know, let's build you up for the morning. Let's build you up.
How did that feel when knowing you came from mornings for 7 years?
Yeah, so it made me feel a couple of different emotions. At first it made me feel like, oh, okay, I get it. Yeah, that's, you know, no, you don't want to make abrupt changes because this change is abrupt. And you want to see how this goes and see how it can, you know, carry on. It's a business too, like we just said. It's a business, so you don't want to pay me, which you're going to have to pay me to get back in that spot because our revenue is lacking actually right now. So I get that, but then, you know, then it plays on your self-esteem. It plays on your insecurities. It plays on your, you know, like, oh. Over there, speaking of KMOJ, I was good enough. Am I not good enough over here? Because, you know, now you have to listen. Now you're listening to me to get me ready for that position. Possibly, though, depending on how the numbers go and all that stuff. So it made me feel, at first it made me be understanding, and then it also pissed me off a little bit. I'm not going to lie to you. And also made me feel like, you know, try it out. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you try it out. I don't have a problem with being demoted or, you know what I'm saying? But try it, because if we would have tried it, you never know what could have happened. It could have been a great thing for the station, or it could have not have been a great thing for the station. But we don't know because we didn't even try it. And then I think they had an intern kind of fill in. She was a female intern that kind of filled in for a female voice here and there. So then it kind of just played on my... It kind of played on me knowing how radio can be male dominated and is male dominated. So it put me back in that mind frame of, oh, okay, yeah, I see. You got to stay in your little box, I guess, for now.
So what's the time for you,
girl? What's next for Lisa? So I'm writing a book. I think we've talked about that. I'm writing a book, which is taking a lot of time and a lot of my mental capabilities. But I'm writing a book about an experience that happened to me in 2015. I have a online coffee shop with my sister called Not Your Cup of Tea. So I'm going into more entrepreneurial things. I think I want to get into more service work. I think I want to put myself out there and help people and help. I have an issue with homelessness. I have an issue with people not being able to eat. I have an issue with people not being able to be warm. I have an issue with that. So I think I want to dive into those different things, and I have a handful of young women that I mentor to. So I want to get more into those types of things, and acting, voiceovers. I'm still doing my voiceovers, but yeah, that's what's next for me. I'm putting out my resume and my air checks, and we'll see.
Anything else you want to add?
I would like to say, I know a lot of things are happening now with people, and because of the pandemic, and a lot of people are losing their jobs, and a lot of people are just depressed, and a lot of people are not knowing what to do, or the unknown is scary for a lot of people. I just would like to let people know that I believe in a God that if you pray and you put your trust in, that He will see you through. So I would like to leave that with people, that hope for people to have a relationship with their Creator.
Thanks so much for watching. Help change the narrative by becoming a supporter on Facebook.
She was born in Columbus, Georgia in 1886. She kept her roots right here, and she never forgot her roots of Columbus, Georgia. Her first performance in the Springer Opera House at the age of 15, and some history books say 14.
She's the mother of blues.
She's the mother of the blues. Even though she wasn't the first, Mamie Smith was the first recorder of an African-American woman in blues, and that was in the 1920s. She recorded the first. Then Ma Rainey was in 1923. But people don't realize Ma Rainey didn't start recording till she was 37 years old.
Wow.
So it was a short span, but I think the significance of it, she recorded almost 100 sides of music. That's something that no artist does today, 100 sides of music.
Wow.
Ma Rainey's records in Paramount, when they sent these records out, you could buy them through the mail. They were like from 10 cents to 15 cents. This is some of the advertising that Paramount sent when the records were sold. This is a Christmas card. And if you look up under the bottom of the Christmas card, when Paramount was promoting her records, they were known as the Popular Race Records. A Merry Christmas from Paramount. And this was the New York Recording Laboratory.
Wow.
But it wasn't, they always put that, but the records were actually in Port Washington, Wisconsin. So that's where Paramount started out. And it started out as a furniture company and a chair company. That's what it started out in Port Washington. Then they saw this opportunity to start selling the race records made by African Americans. And if you look at this Paramount brochure, this is compliments of the season. This was sent out to all the theaters and the places, and it had all the performers who were on their label. Ma Rainey was one of them, and Lemon Jefferson, and these were all the African American performers who were on Paramount label.
Wow. You know, the other thing that I thought about too is how the building, and you guys have a picture of this in the front, the building was kind of falling apart.
It was no kinda, it was like a bomb had exploded, and we had to take pieces and put them back together like a jigsaw puzzle. Either they were going to remodel the house, rehab it, or they were going to tear it down and use it for parking spaces. So it was voted to council, and that day it was 4 to tear it down and 4 to rehab it. And it was done along racial lines, black, white. And Mayor Frank Martin broke the tie to save the house. Later on, after the house, when we had our opening, one of the same council people who voted to tear it down, he came to me, late Redmond Daniels, and he said, I just didn't know who she was. I didn't know. And it was like, she was actually born again in Columbus when we opened this house. At the age of 18, a traveling minstrel show came to town, like the poster in back of me, and she met Will Paul Rainey. They were married up until about 1916. They were known as Ma and Pa Rainey, assassinators of the blues. They traveled in tent shows and all over the country. We don't know what happened to Pa Rainey, but in 1916 they were no more. And history says that she married again, but we don't know. It's very little that we know about the second husband. Ma Rainey continued to travel. She got her, after her and Pa separated, she got her traveling band, performing all over the South. She performed with some of the great names, Thomas Dorsey, Precious Lord Take My Hand, Villarica, Georgia, who was a native. He was one of her band leaders and arrangers. She had Louis Satchmo Armstrong. The tent shows that she performed in, they would spend the winters in New Orleans, and that's where they said she met Louis Armstrong and Kid Orr. So this room chronicles her whole life. It even chronicles her after death. It has where she was buried at in Porterdale Cemetery here. It also has her death certificate is listing her as a housekeeper. She died of heart conditions in 1939, and having over 100 records for Paramount Records, her death certificate says housekeeper. You know, with a museum and a house museum, it's really more significant if you have things that the person lived with. Mm-hmm. She lived with these things. She slept in that bed. She probably put on her makeup at this dresser. So that's the significance. This is her. She, you know, I can feel her spirit in the room. Okay. This is the piano. This is Ma Rainey's piano. But Ma Rainey didn't play the piano. Her brother Thomas was the musician. Through the house, all the years it was vacant, no one touched the piano. We had vandals stealing the mantle and everything. But the reason they didn't touch it, it was painted green like the house next door. Wow. The trim next door, it was a green piano and stool. And through 20 years, the vandals didn't even touch it. So this is, and it's also the same bird's eye maple that her bedroom suit is. Mm-hmm. The same design and the same. So this is the same, probably the same manufacturer that did this. Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. Now, August Wilson wrote the play in 1982, and it was performed as you and I talked in 84. It's that jazz session, and tensions are flaring. And that session was in 1927 in a recording session in Chicago. So a lot of people think that the play talks about Columbus and whole life. It's just that one session where she pours her soul out of how she thinks she's been exploited, but she's still standing, you know, and she says, you know, she won't perform till they bring her that Coke. And, you know, that's the control she had. But, you know, she was so unapologetic to the world. She was, this is who I am and what I am, and I'm not going to apologize for it. And that was a time when African Americans, and especially African American women who didn't have a voice, and she had a voice through her music.
All right, y'all. Y'all make sure y'all stay tuned, like it or not. Going down next.
You sure you can handle? We be faster than Django.
Pixie on the moon. Good to see you. Good morning.
I'll still think about it. We can take my Lambo. I'll put on a tight show.
Katrina, good morning to you.
Thank
you for that.
Can't stop, won't stop. I can't stop, won't stop. I can't stop, won't stop. Can't stop. Can't stop, won't stop. Can't stop, won't stop. Can't stop, won't stop. Can't stop.
Woo. All right, y'all. I joined the gym and said to the trainer, I want to impress beautiful, beautiful girls. Which machine should I use?
We can take my Lambo.
He said try the ATM outside.
You sure you can handle? We be faster than Django.
Sophia Williams, good morning, Miss Sophia. Hey, Miss Sophia. Six Dragon Daddy, what's going on? Good morning. Finally. Laura Estrada, good morning to you. JD, good morning. Trevor Pickney, what's going on? Mother Gwen, good morning. It Get Her 9.
Can't stop. Can't stop.
Sorry, sir. We don't serve time travelers here. A time traveler walks into a bar. That was it. That was the joke. That was all y'all got. Lady Lou, good morning. Love you too, mama. Cardi Wynn, good morning to you. Shay. Ism Onassis, good morning. Robert Wilson, Buster Be Good, good morning to y'all.
I'm about to go Goku. Leave my head is red like old news. Yeah, trying to get the green like it's Whole Foods. Couldn't take my style and now you so blue. Yeah, now we don't even know you. Your hometown, we don't need go to. Trying to get it worldwide, global. Looking like a show, you been killing this is go-to. Spiller, the whole man killer. Life so free, can no man kill him. Came from the bottom, was a
Tyler, good morning, Tyler.
man with no found window.
JD, yes, UFOs are real.
Survive through the wreckage. You should go look for the exit. New sheriff in town, I get a little reckless. Mr. Memo.
All right, y'all. Y'all know what time it is. Let's go ahead and get this show started.
Yeah.
We had to wait on
y'all. Know what time it is. Good morning, y'all.
I had to go ahead and start and delete some stories. My damn Good morning, everybody.
It's time for Like It or Not, y'all. 9 a.m. to 10:30, yeah. Like It or Not is on your channel, yeah. Politics and culture, it's we change skin like we're supposed to, yeah. Interviews and all the news, we get to choose what gets the views. Like It or Not, with Queen Azor, it started now, so stick around.
Like it or not, it's going down. Like it or not, y'all stick around. Oh, Rebecca Azor, it's coming through. I just invented a telepathically controlled air freshener. For you, oh, makes sense when you think about it. This is his show. He's a politics bro. I am your DJ. DJ exclusive. Y'all know who I am.
I stay dropping them jams.
Like it or not, it's going down. Like it or not. What do you call a zombie who writes music? Around. Oh, a decomposer. Like it or not, it's starting now. Just so everybody's clear. Like it or not. I want to put my glasses on.
To go down.
Like It or Not with Benjamin Dixon starts now.
There's this new story that has come out, this one published in the Workers' World, about a new filing in the case of Mumia Abu-Jamal, who is one of the more prominent and long-held political prisoners, by Dr. Johanna Fernandez, that one of his most ardent supporters and advocates. And the short of it is that new evidence has been unearthed that shows more of the details of the chicanery and abuse in the trial and continued imprisonment of Mumia. Mumia, a former journalist, supporter of the MOVE movement, Black Panther Party, award-winning journalist at that, who has been locked up, Kalanji Chenmi, on that 1980-81 for the killing of police officer Daniel Faulkner, 40 years, where there has been, and I'm being insufficient here in saying there has been decades from the beginnings of the trial, of legal abuses, injustices in the carrying out of the process of locking him up. And these new sets of boxes, 6 boxes of case files that were found in the storage of the DA's office back in December 2018, show even more complicity in the state abusing the rights of Mumia and assuring that he not be given a just trial and certainly free to this point. Now, there's much more to say. We can get into some of the details. Certainly, Kalanji knows. Yeah, please go ahead.
Can I ask
please
you a point for a point of information? You're saying how many files were found in the DA's office?
So let me just quickly read here. With continued pressure from below, 2022 will be the year that forces the Philadelphia DA's office and the Philly Police Department to answer questions about why they framed imprisoned radio journalist and veteran Black Panther Mumia Abu-Jamal. Abu-Jamal's attorneys have filed a PCRA petition focused entirely on the 6 boxes of case files that were found in a storage room of the DA's office in late December 2018, after the case being heard before Judge Leon Tucker in the Court of Common Pleas concluded, end quote. So in other words, they found 6 boxes of material that is further evidence. And there's so much more going back to the Judge Sabo trial initially of him basically saying, I'm going to help fry the nigger, as I believe was the exact quote. But there's all of these anyway, so there's just more evidence of the state's complicitness in railroading Mumia Abu-Jamal. And the real issue, the point I always want to make about all of this is that the real issue, whatever the claimed details are of the trial or of the case itself, is the fact that Mumia represents a wing of struggle that this country has been demonizing ever since we've been dragged over here. He represents a militant approach and response and call to us to organize that it continues to be demonized. So the continued presence of him and others as political prisoners is evidence of itself, by itself, of the lack of change and progress we've made in this country.
Right. And I think we got to keep in mind too that Mumia he's been a political target for many years, starting at age 14 when he joined the Black Panther Party. He was a award-winning journalist before he was framed and sent to these gulags. Of course, he was sentenced to death row, and after 20 years, they realized, or they decided that they would take him off death row, and they kept him on death row for another 10 years because the police unions were trying to get him, keep him in I mean, they wanted to see him dead, basically. So it began with not only his work with the Black Panther Party, but what really catapulted the state's disdain for him was when he was fighting on behalf of the MOVE organization going back to 1988. So Mumia, we interviewed him very recently on Black Power Media, and he's in good health now, but he's also been suffering from different types of medical condition, including hepatitis Hep C, and also different ailments of the heart. He just had a heart surgery situation earlier this year, and he's been trying to break him, but he is, he's still strong. We have to know that the man's been locked up since he was 27 years old. He's now 67. So when we talk about political prisoners, oftentimes we think of like old men, but many of these prisoners, these brothers and sisters who have been framed and incarcerated, have been locked up since early 20s and mid 20s, so on and so forth. And you have folks not only like Mumia, but like Sundiata Kohli, who's now 84 years old, who they still denying parole. So
at 84 years old.
Yes.
At 84 years old, they're denying. Yes. But you know what they'll let an 84-year-old do? Say good morning to you at Walmart on Christmas Day.
Oh, how about that? That's deep.
On the real.
Ringing the bell. It's crazy that what they'll do is want to paint him as cop killer, those things. And how in America, once you say this person murdered a cop or was affiliated with anything like that, they're going to, we see what they do with that, because Blue Lives Matter over Black lives. That's just what it is. That's America's way. And so when they paint somebody as that, this police force, the union, everybody, because once you have on uniform, they just believe that they're all one, but they're still moving in white supremacist ways. That's just what it is as well. So it's like when we hear about Mumia, I have a friend of mine who used to discuss it for years. And then he talked about some recent news of him he posted, and he's like, why isn't anyone talking about this? This is because, they don't want to look at the bigger picture. They don't want to look at his work. They don't want to like who he is, what he's done, his history, just putting out the fact that, he's associated with killing a cop. And that's it. Once people hear that, it's like nobody wants to move forward in trying to get to know anything about what his history was, what his walk was, what were the reasons, what parties he was affiliated with, what happened, how he helped the community, anything. Those are going to be those things that we don't know. And that's almost like the way that they want us to, what is it, critical race theory, how they don't want us to know a lot about the true stories that happened to a lot of these people that we know, their names, like Martin Luther King, how they fluffed all of that, how they fluffed a lot of this information. They don't want you to know it. They just want you to see this, whatever they want to teach you, that's it. But if we read about Mumia, if we read about his walk, if we read about the history of it, if we read about the things that he was fighting for, we'll have a better understanding, right? Because being Black in America is not easy. So when we have somebody willing to fight for us, willing to give up their life for us, there's always more to that story. So I think that with in this particular case, it would serve us to definitely refer back to the interview that you guys did with him recently, and for us to get to know the history of what he's been through.
I was going to say, do you have any? Did you bring any of the interview that you guys did with him recently? Do we have any of that?
No, we actually didn't bring it is an audio interview, of course.
Okay.
We can have that.
Right, because we would have needed to convert it for you. But listen, next time we obviously we're going to do this on a regular basis because, and James, I'm sorry, I didn't want to cut you off. I was just curious if we had that clip. But we want to do this on an ongoing basis. So feel free to send any of those type of interviews, any of those clips from your episodes that helps highlight this, because the truth of the matter is what Rebecca said is true. The moment you hear a cop killer,
right,
even Black folks who understand exactly how that plays out, when they throw us on the hood and tell us to stop resisting and we already in the handcuffs, right? But they say cop killer and we all just turn our heads. And it's a pretty convenient way to get us to look away from people who have been in prison since they were 27. Man.
Now, I would just go
ahead.
Just to add on to what you're saying, and to what Rebecca said about, folks not, having information on Mumia. The sad thing about it, internationally, he has a very large international support effort going right now. Everyone from Richard Wright's daughter, Julia Wright, to France Fanon's daughter. And I mean, he actually has a street named after him in France. You know what I mean? Mumia has written 11 books since he's been locked up. So it's not, it's not like
it's an American.
And I need folks to understand, when you say political prisoners, all political prisoners aren't accused of murdering police officers.
That's right.
Martin Luther King, whose birthday is coming up, he was considered a political prisoner for the short time he was locked up, not because of the fact that there was any crimes committed, but because of his political beliefs and actions. So we got to keep that in mind. So when we talk about political prisoners, it's not just a situation where, they're accused of, and in fact, it's not even a question of guilt or innocence. You know what I mean? We often talk about in America how we have a right to defend ourselves. So many folks have defended themselves. In the case of Assata Shakur, where she was shot on the New Jersey Turnpike with her hands up, you know what I'm saying, with her arms up. So we have to understand, exactly what we're doing.
I mean, people should remember and be aware of what the case involved, what the claim involved. The official claim involves Mumia leaving his cab to defend his brother, who was being accosted violently by the police, and then shots were fired. A cop is dead. Mumia is himself shot. So one way I think to look at it is, even if he is said to have done, and there's a lot of evidence to suggest he didn't do it, but even if he was said to have done what he did, why wouldn't we want to be as vigorous in his defense anyway? In other words, so like when we talk about George Floyd or Dante Wright or whoever else, what if someone associated with Dante or George stepped in, intervened, And while suffering a shot themselves, the cop is the one that is wounded or dead, and Dante and George survive. Would we then turn our back on that person who intervened, or do we really need to wait until we're all dead in the street before we step up and say that there's something wrong? So that would just be one part of it. But then when you look at the case itself and the politics involved, nobody, even if he is said to have done what he is accused of, nobody should have to suffer what Mumia has suffered, and for the reasons he has suffered it, which have nothing ultimately to do with killing the police officer. It is all about his politics and his journalism work.
And it's I like how you guys broke that down, Kalonji, making sense to you don't have to be a cop killer or whatever to be a political prisoner. And when they're in these prisons, it's you guys mentioned breaking down. So his health is diminishing, and they don't give a damn. They're just like, he deserves, we won't give him anything. His health is diminishing. This man has been in here for decades. They want to break your mental. They want to do that. And they start really young. We see even in just the jail system, right? They'll just throw you in there, say no phone calls. We've seen where people have gone into just jail just to be there for a night and have not left it because they are dead. Right. And this is the system that the police officers do in here. And like you said, it doesn't have to just be something where, he's possibly killed a cop. It could be just where you stand on a black situations, on black matters. And the fact that you do stand up for black people, they'll throw you in jail just because of that. They'll try to break you and break your mind and try to make you think that that's going to shift how you feel. No, I'm going to stay on this. But now they're going to say you don't deserve any meals. You don't deserve any health care. I mean, the system is already messed up in that way. But, they're going to make sure that you break. And here we still have, see this man being able to communicate and talk after all these years. But I know it's doing a number on him. I know it. I know it.
Yeah, right. Remember, a journalist. He's a journalist. So that means that any one of us on this platform today can be the next Mumia. You have to understand that he was interviewing people like Bob Marley. He wasn't just a political journalist. He wasn't just, worried about the movement, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? There's interviews that you can check out with. I mean, how many people interviewed Bob Marley? You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's like, come on, man. This is
he's legendary.
Yeah, serious guy. So
there's a couple things that y'all are saying here that all connects. And Rebecca, one of the things you pointed out is how they break it down on levels of analysis, right? They break it down on 3 levels and then they toss it out. Here's the thing with this country has no problem handling people that they deem to be a threat to it. None. But they don't seem to think those people on January 6th pose a sufficient enough threat to remotely get some kind of punishment like this brother got right here. People who want to overthrow the government, I mean, not want to, but actually try to, versus people who fight on behalf of Black lives. Do we not see the juxtaposition of what this empire really thinks about Black folk?
No, that's pretty clear. I mean, the whole discussion around January 6th is it's just a new propaganda media spectacle now, the way they'll turn, 9/11 or Veterans Day or some commemoration of a war into some, flag waving event to remind people of what the appropriate politics are. Yeah. And we could even debate, to what extent we thought January 6th was some sort of takeover or threat, or to whatever extent even intelligence agencies were in themselves increasingly reported to having been involved with that. But the point still remains that whatever was happening, and certainly the way it's being recast and retold, is to remind everybody that there is nothing left of the Democratic Party. There is nothing, appropriate about, uprisings or criticism of the state or the material conditions of the people held within it. So all of that is what is being done here. And then Mumia stands as not just a suffering individual, but political prisoners like him are symbols to that same effect, to say, look, if you want to rise up in a certain direction, this is the punishment. Because yes, while some of the so-called insurrectionists of January 6th have some prison sentences and whatnot, there hasn't been some crackdown on them the way there was on the Black Power movement, the Black liberation struggle, or people like Mumia. So again, that was why I'll stop here where I start, that the very fact that Mumia remains and others remain, Mutulu Shakur, Sundiata Kohli remain incarcerated, is evidence of the absence of change and the absence of real progress in this country.
That's right. Brother Chunka.
Muted, my man.
Muted.
Oh man, we got to show him how to unmute over there. There you go. Oh wait,
there we go.
There it is. I was saying some cold stuff, man. I mean, y'all. I think Dr. Ball muted me and said, "Man, you ain't gonna get this one up on me this time." But,
that's how we do it, BPM. You gotta get in when you can get in. It's a struggle. It's more over there, boy.
Yes. You gotta go for yours. You get tossed out the car, ran over. To the point, man. It's like, we're clear. You have political prisoners. The longest held political prisoner in the United States is Rochelle McGee, and he's been incarcerated for 57 years, going to 58 years. You know what I mean? He was one of the comrades of Jonathan Jackson. You know what I mean? So we're talking about Jonathan Jackson's been dead since 1970. He was locked up before then. So you're talking about 58 years now. And I mean, it's ridiculous. You have folks like Sirhan getting out of prison. You know what I mean? You have folks like John Hinckley Jr., who shot the president of the United States.
I didn't think you could get worse than a person killing a nominee for the president of the United States, but a person who actually shot the president of the United States. Both them, man, go on, keep preaching.
We're talking about, when you talk about white power, they remind you of your place on this planet. And even if the black guy, the one black guy who decided to run up in the Capitol as well, I mean, I'm quite sure that his time is going to be a little bit longer.
Yes.
Because they got to remind him that you still.
We say that all the time too. Yep.
Yeah. Know who you think you are, Negro. Don't get it twisted.
You want to stand in the middle of the in the hall, just like chilling, like, yeah, what's going on, man? You about to be like the longest.
Wait a minute,
man.
David, we're gonna see. It's not even a test. David is the greatest producer on the face of the planet. David, go get Antufus. It's been a long time since we ran that clip, but black folks, y'all better know better than to run up in these crowds with audiences that are white, thinking you're gonna come out scot-free. Because this dude ran up with the Proud Boys one time and came out with no teeth.
Wow. So is this your interview with Mumia here?
Yeah, that's actually one of them. We have that clip, and we have another one that's a little shorter. But that was the first interview we did. I don't think I think that was probably the first interview he did since he had his heart surgery, if I'm not mistaken. So
wow.
Yeah.
Man, we could talk about this all day.
But before, sorry, Ben. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Rebecca. Because I was going to ask another question.
So much. I love how you guys break down political prisoners, because it could be anyone. It can be any one of us that are sitting right here. I know that there was, and I forget his name. Georgia's colleague passed yesterday. I know he was a big journalist, and he passed yesterday, and I forget his name. Yes, and
Mel. Yes. Mel Reeves.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And she was saying how, a lot of journalists, she said, they asked her, how do you consider yourself, as a journalist? She said, I'm just a journalist. She's somebody who works in the media. And he was telling her, hey, you're an activist. And she said, I don't consider myself an activist. But when he started breaking down, listen, just being Black, covering this content, covering all of this, you're naturally just an activist. It just comes with it. You can't, you ask a white person as a journalist, what they doing. It's just like they can regurgitate the news. But when we're talking about our issues, or we're talking about things that are happening in our communities, you're naturally an activist. When you're choosing these stories, you're just naturally an activist. So when I hear about Mumia, when I hear us, and when I see us, and I see the stories that we choose to cover, and I see the content that we choose to cover, it could be us at any moment. We know a lot of people who aren't journalists, who are maybe musicians, who have been have been muted because they talk about political issues, right? We know so many people who have been just because they've been just talking about political things. It could be hunger, right? In Black communities, and they'll shut you down. The vaccine, for people to have easy access to getting the vaccine in Black communities, they'll literally blacklist you just for that. We see this happening every day, and it's really sad to see people who are fighting for this movement or anything, or just anything that helps us as a people. And it also brings me back to, if we go to Breonna Taylor, right? The cop shooting into her home, her boyfriend shooting back, and they instantly, put him as the criminal, right? And try to frame that whole situation as them being criminal just because the cop was shot or whatever the case may be. And this is where I'm saying, like, it's up to us to change the narrative and change the rhetoric. It's gonna be, it's rocky. A lot of us may be put into jail just for going to cover a protest while them folks is pulling up to the Capitol on January 6th, doing all kinds of stuff. Ain't been reprimanded, okay? None of them. And
they get vegan meals.
That's what I was going to say, man. The health of Mumia, and the your boy, the shaman, the dude with the horns in the Capitol, in the Senate, making a mockery of all that is the security of this empire, gets a vegan meal. You see how they treat white terrorist insurrectionists as opposed to Black people fighting for Black lives.
Or McDonald's, if you pour white trash in South Carolina, you can get a Happy Meal.
Burger King meal. Stop at Burger King on the way. Yeah.
Pardon me. Wrong.
No, I mean, just
when you pulling up to protest to kill folks, you can get dapped up. You know what I'm saying? They're telling you, just because you told the cop that you love them. I mean, listen, you're gonna get walked to the car, you're gonna get a meal, and then you're gonna become a celebrity after the fact.
A damn celebrity.
So I mean, again, rest in power to Mel Reeves, because Mel represented an ethic that certainly is exemplified in Mumia. That you and the way it could be any field. If you I've attempted to engage the academy from the perspective of an activist. Mel attempted to engage journalism from the perspective of an activist. We engage media spaces like YouTube, et cetera, from the perspective. So it could be anything that medical doctors, people talk about Che Guevara being the best example of that. You enter a field with an idea of how you want to practice it and apply that trade. And there's a penalty for that. There can often be a penalty for that, whether it's marginalization or worse. So Mel certainly represented that, and we need people like that who engage journalism from the perspective of, I'm working for the liberation of my community and my people. So I will, if my talent is writing or producing media, I'm going to do it in service of that struggle. And that is certainly what Mel was an exemplar of, and certainly a part of the reason why Mumia is still locked up.
Listen, I want to be honest here. I did not know Mel, and I did not know his work. And actually, I need to give Georgia a call back, because I was talking to Georgia yesterday and she mentioned it, and it didn't register to me because I didn't know the significance of his work. But of course, I knew the significance of her relationship, of a friend who dies. But when you don't have knowledge, you really can't understand like the scope and the scale of the impact of a person's work. And Professor Ball, thank you for giving that impromptu eulogy, because now you can understand, even those of us who didn't know of him beforehand, we can understand what it is to take whatever work we're doing and do it from the perspective of an activist to honor his memory.
Yeah, right on.
Our guests are here and they're ready to jump on the screen. We always have an amazing time when it's Freedom All Fridays, especially when we can spend time with Professor Jerry Ball of Morgan State University and Brother Kalonji Changa. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. As always, it's a pleasure. We have Rebecca Azor on the screen and Dr. Carl Mack. How goes the day?
Man, y'all cutting up over here. Y'all just cutting up, man. I'm checking it out backstage. Y'all talking about Miss Cleo. Call me now. I'm listening to Dr. Carl Mack talk about how Rebecca is such a royal queen empress. I'm like, the song in my head was like Return of the Mac. I said, oh, I had to look and see.
That's
my brother going in.
Yeah,
ball alert. I mean, man. I'm like, man, y'all too live for us. You know what I mean? Square, right, Dr. Ball?
As the white guy that chose the Miss Cleo story, I just got to say, I remember those infomercials.
Oh, the Cleo infomercials. David, we ain't talking about Cleo right here. Professor Ball, how you doing, man? Thank you so much.
I'm as good as could be expected.
How is it up?
No, it's a pleasure.
Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying it's a pleasure. Thanks.
Oh, man. Listen, we got a lot of voices.
Much love to you both. Good morning to you.
Yes, sir.
Likewise. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Good to see y'all again.
Let's jump right into it because, while we circle this show in joy, like we intentionally wrap it in laughter and music. One of the reasons we do that, Professor Ball, is because of the seriousness of the work that goes on when we talk about liberation. The liberation of not only Black people, but the liberation of all people across the globe. It's a pretty daunting task. And so here we are this Friday to talk about specifically our political prisoners. I'll yield the floor to you to bring attention to these issues.
Well, I mean, as you know, we always like to remind everybody one of the main reasons why we try to stay vigilant on this issue is that while people are continue to be politically imprisoned, that is, imprisoned for their political activity and their ideas and their politics, organizational work, that we have to be reminded that is, to me, in and of itself, sign that that whatever advance or progress we want to claim has not really been achieved. If we have risen to a new level of political power and freedom and equality, et cetera, and so forth, then these people would be, again, not only freed, but returned home with parades, thank yous, and reparations and all other kinds of stuff. So in this case, I'm thinking specifically of, I'm wearing her shirt today, Assata Shakur, who remains in exile under the threat of a warrant in Cuba, and her former partner, Kamal Siddiqui, remains locked up here in the United States, having been arrested in 2003, I believe, and I'm sure Kalanji can check me on that if I'm off on that, for refusing to give Assata up. And he was then locked up with life plus, I think, 30 years. I think they added on to it. And charged falsely with an old cold case killing of a police officer that no one believes or could prove or has any evidence that he was involved with. He was only locked up specifically because, having been a father of a daughter with Assata and wanting to not give her up in terms of her whereabouts or how they could track her down and rearrest her, he was himself arrested and thrown in prison and charged with this police killing. So we just wanted to come and talk a little bit about that. There's been a new effort to a letter writing campaign this past week on his behalf to try to get more attention on his case and get him freed, as is the case with people like Mumia Abu-Jamal, Leonard Peltier, Veronza Bowers, and on and on. So anyway, that's so just lastly, is a lot of people, because this is a point Dhoruba bin Wahad has made, former political prisoner himself, that a lot of folks, younger folks wearing Assata Taught Me shirts and who are not themselves following necessarily her politics, or the fact that her other comrade, Sundiata Acoli, remains locked up in prison, or that her former partner, Kamal Siddiqui, remains locked up in prison. In other words, it's not enough just to, if she is teaching us anything, then we need to be learning that we need to defend these other folks and appreciate the politics and ideas that they were working with and for which they're being punished.
Brother Changa, I want you to chime in there.
Yeah, I would like to just add on to what Dr. Ball was saying. When he mentioned a cold case, we're talking about a case from, I believe, 1973. You know what I mean? So we're talking about if not 73, it's somewhere along those lines. We're talking about, at that time, at least 31 years plus in regards to the alleged crime. And it is very important to know, because of the fact that many of the political prisoners that we work with and work on behalf of, they're prisoners because of the fact that in many cases they didn't turn on their comrades. You know what I mean? They didn't make any efforts to go along with the will of the state. And Kamal Siddiqui is one of those cases. I would like to also point out that the particular sentencing judge, he was sentenced here in Atlanta, and the judge, Stephanie Manis, she had a thing for revolutionaries. She actually charged and sentenced Imam Jamil Al-Amin, formerly H. Rap Brown, just 3 years prior to sentencing Kamal Siddiqui. She ended up transitioning in 2016, and may she rest in peace. But she was definitely a racist criminal, and I think that we have to remember our enemies as much as we remember our comrades and our heroes. Yes.
That's right.
Yes.
So brothers,
I want to.
Let me ask this question, Professor Ball and Brother Changa. Given that many won't know the history and the details behind it of being a political prisoner, have you all thought about putting together a documentary to put this out so that folks can know more about what was happening? Because again, no one has to convince Black folk of the type of falsification that is going inside of police reports that have been used to convict us. And so if you all could, or somebody can put together a documentary that shows what the climate was like for Black folks. Again, many of us today, especially our young people today, don't even realize what the climate was like for Black folks during the Freedom Rise, let alone what it was like during the 70s. And now, of course, we're getting a very good understanding of how corrupt and how twisted that judicial system would be, where it can show compassion. Ben, we was just talking about the Karen who used the taser to kill this brother, and now they want to have compassion in her sentences, but let that be a Black person. In the case of Sister Shakira, life sentence. You want to come like that at them. So is there any efforts around doing a documentary and bringing out all the details and facts, so that we as a people can not only be more knowledgeable about it, but rally behind two steward brothers like yourselves who are keeping this in the forefront of our consciousness?
Well, a couple things. One, there are a few out now, passing it on with Daruba Ben Wahad, kind of highlighting his life. It's an older piece in which he was, they pretty much monitored his case and interviewed him, and he ended up getting a court hearing, and he ended up being released while this film was being documented. He's a former political prisoner who was framed after he did 19 years. At first, he was a part of the Panther 21, and they tried to frame him on that particular case, and then 6 days later, they accused him of shooting a couple police officers. But, there's that. There's all power to the people that kind of touches on some of that. And there's the FBI's war on Black America. I would also like to point out that we have a film that we've been working on for over 16 years called Organizing is the New Cool. And that's scheduled to be released this year. But aside from that, the good folks at Black Power Media, we have been talking about doing a more detailed, just to Dr. Mack's point, a more detailed and modern version of what's going on specifically around the case of political prisoners, because, Kamal Siddiqui is one of many. And it's an unfortunate thing because of the fact that you have several different organizations who specialize in quote unquote political prisoners, which is great. Problem is, none of us know all the political prisoner cases here in the United States, because there's some folks who haven't been declared political prisoners. And there's some folks, folks look at the Black Panther Party, they look at the Black Liberation Army, they look at SNCC and RAM and groups like that, and they acknowledge those particular political prisoners, but there are plenty of groups. I have folks who were a part of different formation, who have formations that were considered smaller than some of these other formations, or lesser known, where they have comrades who have been locked up for 30 plus years themselves. I would also like to point to the case, if you all don't mind, of another brother here that was sentenced here in the Georgia area by the name of Veronza Bowers. Now, Veronza Bowers, when you talk about framings and such, he was accused of murdering a park ranger in 1973. And so what they did, the state did, is they got two informants who, federal informants, who decided to collaborate on on this particular case and saying that, you know, this happened and they know that he did it, so on and so forth. But even their own relatives admitted that they were lying. You know what I'm saying? They weren't involved and they got lesser sentences. In fact, one of them was paid $10,000. It was found out later on.
Wow.
Now, that's not even the worst. The situation is he maxed out his 31-year sentence in federal prison. He was scheduled to walk out of jail, out of prison on in June of 2005. So in June of 2005, he's scheduled to walk out. And as he went through his outtake and he gave people, you know, all of his belongings and things of that nature. And just as he's about to walk out, they tell him that they have a hold on him. And this hold came from Alberto Gonzalez, who was the attorney general at that particular time.
That's right.
Made no sense, the particular hold. And they said, you know, it might take up to 60 days. Well, he's been in there since then. You know what I mean? So he served his full time, and it's 17 years later, and he still hasn't been released. Not only has it been 17 years later, the fact that Alberto Gonzalez, there's been 6 attorney generals since he's gone, including one black male attorney general, Eric Holder, and a black woman attorney general, Loretta Lynch, who the NFL has just hired to deal with their racial matters against Brian Flores. So, you know, when you talk about black faces in high places, you know, many of folks who we call our own or we claim, you know, if we just get a black attorney general, we just get a black woman attorney general or a black woman vice president or whatever this case is, you know, in the immortal words of Michael Jackson, they don't really care about us. You know what I'm saying?
Just very quickly, you know, we got to remember also that this Gonzalez character is not only did he do this to Bowers, but he presided over the sweetheart deal for Jeffrey Epstein.
That's right.
So you know we got to remember to draw these distinctions as well. Yeah,
right. So
let me ask this question. You know, you said they haven't been labeled a political prisoner. How does that happen? You know, is it people that follow the case that says we're designating this person as a political prisoner? How does that happen?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, we got to keep in mind that America doesn't acknowledge, the United States doesn't acknowledge that they have political prisoners here in the United States. You know what I'm saying? Right. To them, they're deemed terrorists, and there are powerful institutions like the Fraternal Order of Police, who pretty much was in bed with Gonzalez to make that particular case happen. Whenever you're accused of quote unquote murdering a police officer or anything towards a cop, you can run over a police dog. You're pretty much you can guarantee that you know that you're grass. You know, you might as well get a green thumb. So, and when we talk about these agencies, you know, none of us know I mean, first and foremost, everything in America is political. Everything in the United States is political. The way we talk, the way we walk, the way we dress, so on and so forth. The fact that we don't speak our native language was a result of politics, a result of war. You know what I'm saying? So I think that we have to keep in mind that there are folks who are into the environmental fight. There are folks who are into animal rights. There's folks into you know, all types of different fights and positions. But if you are causing a ruckus or you are pointing out the flaws and the kinks in this system and you're disrupting the money and you're interrupting power, then you become an enemy of the state. You know what I mean? Remember, like we talked about last time, when Abu Jamal was snatched up because he was a journalist. He wasn't arrested because he was a murderer. But you have to. They look for these ways and loopholes to say, okay, boom, Ben Dixon, we got this piece right here where we heard him say, you know, blah blah blah, and the next thing you know, 10 years later, they call you, look. Rebecca, we know she's nutty as squirrel doodle. You know what I'm saying? She run around talking about Haiti. You know what I'm saying? We need you to say you saw her do such and such. And then you like, man, I can't say that. Rebecca cool, whatever, so on and so forth. You know, then you gone. Then they go to Dr. Mack. They say, Dr. Mack, whatever. Man, she was a queen. She was an empress, so on and so forth. All good. But then they go to David. David like, look, man, I just got this new job in CNN.
No, honestly, I really think that we had this conversation yesterday on the show. We literally said, this show, right? It's what they do is they make white seem so right, but you like when it comes to dogs being abused, and I'm sorry to all my dog lovers out there, but a dog's life is so much more important than a black person's life in America. I mean, they have organizations, they have movies about it, documentaries that will go number one about saving the dogs. We got songs that we know, in the eyes of an angel. You know that commercial when I start singing that, because they embed it into our head. Right. And that, but when it comes to black issues and stuff, they really try to halt it. They try to make it seem like it's too extreme. We're black extremists just by saying, listen, Black Lives Matter. Oh no, it's black extremists right here. We don't do that here. That's political conversations at the workplace. That's too political for us, right? But then white folks over here talking about all kinds of BS and how kneeling is, a disrespect to the flag. That's a conversation that still can be had in the workplace. When we're on social media discussing anything like this, we're probably talking about Ms. Shakur's name is going to be flagged, where we can't even have this right here be put into the space of YouTube where that it can get monetized because we mentioned her name, because we mentioned other activists' names here, and the fact that we're challenging the system and calling these people political prisoners, and then talking about black folks who are supposed to be assisting us in these spaces, but we're calling them out. It's very problematic. But when a white channel is doing the same thing, it just seems to come out correct and right. And it's more, like I was saying yesterday, it's more palatable for people because it's coming from a white person saying the same thing that we're saying. But it will be, if you're watching CNN, it will go right after CNN. For us, if you're watching us, they'll take you right over to Fox News. They'll take you right over to all these other things. And they'll say that because we said the word COON, we'll be blacklisted, we'll be shadow banned, for a while. You'll wonder why your content isn't being watched for this whole month, like it was in the previous
whole year in our case. Right?
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
So there's a pattern here, just very quickly, that you're all pointing to. Like historically, one of my favorite books is Patricia Bradley's Propaganda and Slavery, where she points out that historically, the only time the so-called founding fathers and white colonists talked about slavery in the public was to propagandize their fellow white citizens to struggle against the British. In other words, slavery was only brought up in the context of what the British were doing to white citizens. And then nowadays, in a very similar context, we have even what is supposed to be a white alternative left media environment will only talk about political prisoners if they're talking about Julian Assange, or maybe the newer case with my man who was struggling with Chevron. I forgot his name.
Dollinger. Or
Donziger or something like that. Yeah. And both of them, of course, should be supported, but they should also be understood in the context of broader political imprisonment that should include the people that we're talking about here who never get discussed. So if you want Julian to be free, if you want Donziger to be free, then the same level of effort should be put to raising the fact that Leonard Peltier or Mumia or Kamal Siddiqui or many others are still not free. And then lastly, I just would want to remind that the issue is, of course, the ideas with which these people work. As much as Siddiqui and Sundiata Acoli and Assata Shakur are important as individuals, it's the ideas that they encouraged around socialism and Pan-Africanism and radical nationalism and redistribution that caused them and continue to cause us problems. And in fact, my favorite way of demonstrating that is, even if people will remember what then Governor Schwarzenegger said when he signed the death warrant to kill Stanley Tookie Williams. So this whole point about political imprisonment, this country does, to Kalanji's point, they don't acknowledge that political prisoners exist. They say that all of these people were convicted under the due process of the law. But as Schwarzenegger said in his statement about Stanley Tookie Williams, who had been convicted as a Crip and a gangster, but who had become a Nobel Prize nominee and had rehabilitated himself and was seen as someone who was of great value to humanity, Schwarzenegger said he must be put to death because in his book, that is Tukey Williams' book, he dedicated that book to people like Asada and George Jackson and Malcolm X, which from Schwarzenegger's point of view proved that he had not redeemed himself and was therefore unredeemable and deserving of death. So in other words, what they're saying is, if you engage in these ideas, regardless of what it is we think we can prove that you've done, you are to be targeted for assassination and punishment.
Amen. When white America stands up.
Your teacher your students have to absolutely love you. What an absolutely brilliant analysis. And thank you so much for that. Both you and Brother Changa. Thank you so much.
Well, somebody clip that and send that to my Canvas blackboard. Yeah, that's right. I'm just quoting Kalanji.
Nah, but on the real, I think we got to keep in mind too, whenever white folks in America stand up against tyranny and oppression, they're considered Minutemen and patriots and such. And when black folks do the same thing, then you are a terrorist. So we have to keep that in mind. And there's always two Americas, two U.S., two United States. And until we recognize and realize and accept that our position here, we were never brought here to be citizens. We were brought here as chattel slaves. We were brought here to be surplus workers. And until we recognize that, our citizenship literally is still 3/5 of a man. You know what I'm saying? That's how much of a citizen we are. We're 3/5. So if we, to Rebecca's point, imagine if we could rally and lobby to get the rights of canines. If we can get the rights that animals have, if we got that, we'll be a step or two ahead of where we are right now.
Wow.
Because you can't not feed your dog. You can't not make sure the dog is taken care of. You got to make sure the dog is on point. You know what I mean? And you cannot kill the dog. You know what I'm saying? But you can stand your ground against any black person you see fit because of the fact that you feel threatened.
I want to echo what you're saying there, brother. We're getting ready to, on the morning show, go into conversations with quite a few mothers who have not even gotten the first step in justice. And it's not from police killings anymore. It's not just police killings. We're dealing with an inundation. There's so many cases of parents who are having to get justice for their black child who was killed by just a random white person who was able to say they were standing their ground, and then the police didn't even investigate, didn't arrest anybody. Like it's repeating itself over and over again around the country. The nature of our blackness is being shined so brightly juxtaposed to how they treat our blackness.
Hey, remember what Derek Bell, the late great law professor and co-founder of critical race theory that has been so maligned recently, remember what he said? He said, if you look at the public policy, just the public policy of the United States, it has the equivalent effect of taking hundreds of black people on a weekly basis out to a field and shooting them. That was his analysis. And just at the way food, healthcare, housing, stress, violence is distributed in this society, just being the public policy is set to the equivalent of killing hundreds of black people every week.
And Professor Ball, and Ben, to your point, in case folks want to think that what Brother Bell said didn't make sense, go back to the Ahmaud Arbery situation. Before that videotape was leaked, those who saw it, who had control of it, were doing absolutely nothing about it. Absolutely nothing about it. So those situations that we're talking about will absolutely exist unless we shine that light on it. Because when they have that power, and Ben, the same thing just happened in Mississippi, where we're talking about the FedEx driver, and he's reported that these two white men have shot at him. He's given the report to the local police, and now he's asking that his case be taken out of the hands of the local police and brought up on a state level, on a federal level, because, again, when it's just in their control, we've seen what they would do. And there are killings that have taken place all over this country. And if the information is not leaked, those who see the crime that's committed amongst themselves will absolutely protect the perpetrators for it.
Dr. Mack, I've gotten so many up until till we got our own platform, till we established our own platform. We had gotten so many different emails and texts. I can, if you all can just look into my inbox and my emails. It's like I hate to even open my messages at times because of the fact that, places in Louisiana and in Tennessee and Connecticut and all over the country, you know what I'm saying? Texas, this is not a rare thing. You have so many cases of folks dating back for, I would say the last 10 years or so. You know what I mean? Since I've been, more active on the email tip 15, 18 years or so. So many different cases, so many names and so many families that we've worked with that are still nameless because of the fact that we didn't have the wattage or the power to that's right to share the information we have. So we're grateful for folks like you all, because of the fact that you didn't say that, look, well, they got their own thing going on over there, so we ain't gonna really rock with them like that, and we gonna act like they don't exist. Because there's a lot of stuff.
I am watching your numbers, though. Y'all got some pretty good numbers over there.
Hey, man, we ain't messing with you yet, but we coming. But on the real, man, it's some real suckers out there, and I'm gonna say it just like that because of the fact that, we will promote CNN, we will promote Fox. We will, as you all talked about earlier, we'll promote Baller Alert and we'll promote Shade Room and Drink Champs and all that type of stuff. But when it comes to pure politics, we don't have no promo time. It's like what Malcolm said, we can go to war in Vietnam, but it comes to seeing little black boys and little black girls being bombed in a church in Alabama, we won't have no more blood. You know
because
what I mean?
Honestly, talk bad about Drink Champs, though.
Yeah,
I'm cool with all.
Why would you mention Drink Champs? But at the same time, I honestly think what you're saying
but go ahead.
I like a good drink. But I honestly think what you're saying is a societal thing. It's the logic. It's how we've been brought up. If we start, even if it's black, it's considered too much when we start having to reach back just to tell the story. And in order for us to tell the story, we got to show y'all. Listen, this is what y'all ancestors did. Y'all being white people. This is what y'all ancestors did. This is what this country was built off of. I know they told you that I know you never knew probably because it just was considered to be too much to discuss this, but yet we can discuss other things that have happened in the world that have been a lot. But when it comes to the black story, the true black story in America, they do not want to have that conversation. For instance, what the Women of the Movement movie, right? It didn't even really, I don't even think it really scratched the surface as to how extreme that actually was, and it's actually a true story, but it was considered just too much for me to watch it myself. It was a lot because I already knew what was going to happen, but I watched it and I learned a little bit more. But the only people having the conversation online were black folks. White people couldn't even handle watching that story. It's available to you right here, but they're not going to watch it. The documents that are available all over the place for white folks, it's just not. It's just considered too much historically. And then
Rebecca. Yeah,
go ahead.
Sorry. No. I was going to say, for the most part, they know because they benefited off of it. But the thing is, that would draw into question the fact that they should be brought up on charges for receiving stolen goods because of the fact that they stole us. They stole kidnapping charges. They stole, resources from all over the planet. So in that sense, then, they've parlayed an empire off of thievery, rape, murder, so on and so forth. So it's not that they don't know. And we, unfortunately, we should be the first to blame because of the fact that you have black people that are afraid to speak about it. I've been to places where black folks speaking at different universities where they'll pull me to the side. Well, we have some white guests, please don't talk about such and such. If you don't mind, you can just whatever. I'm like, okay, cool, bet. First soon as I get on stage, boom, white man, boom, 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 bang, 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 boom, boom, boom. They looking at me like, I just told this Negro, whatever. And I'm gonna point out, well, my man over here asked me not to speak about this.
Yes.
Hold on. Balagoon, you got the check from homeboy? Yeah, okay, good, let's go. So
Brother Chang, let me say this. So the first time that I was asked to speak at the National Society of Black Engineers National Conference, and it was being sponsored, the opening session was being sponsored by Dale. And, of course, I'm president of the NAACP in Seattle. I'm raising hell all over the thing. First thing the folks from Dale said is, we need to get a copy of Brother Mac's speech so we can understand what he's talking about. And I said to the National Society of Black Engineers, you got a mission statement that speaks to your social consciousness. There ain't a damn thing that I'm giving you about what it is I'm going to say. And if they don't like it, you can take them platinum handcuffs and keep them on your ass, but don't bring that bullshit over here to me. That ain't what I do.
And so let me say this, though. The people who don't know that I'm talking about, there's a video, and these are people I'm talking about, not the folks, because people my age and a little older, my age, I ain't old, I'm 31, but people my age and a little older, you should know. Now, there are kids out there. Yesterday, or a few days ago, there's a video that's going viral. These are the ones who I'm saying don't know, because CRT is not a big deal to them. And so much has been taken out. The little that we already had in the school system, so much has been taken out since then, because it's considered too much. There's this little girl who thinks they did a walkout, right? And she thinks she's saying something so important. Little white girl on the mic. She was saying, if it wasn't for our Martin Luther King, who abolished slavery. Facts. Yes. I can't make it up. This is an actual video.
Damn it, I have not seen
viral,
that.
And she is on. Yeah, and she said if it wasn't for Martin Luther King, who abolished slavery, she's saying that with she took it from her shanana. She took it from deep down inside of her, and she believed that. And she was spreading this misinformation to people, and it was so sad because she thought she was saying something correct. And this is what I'm saying. It's important for even the little white kids, the little smart Generation Zers. They need to understand and know the stories, but their parents and the ones before them are thinking that it's too extreme. It's too much. So now what we're doing is banning books like The Bluest Eye and things like that. We're taking away things. We're taking away the little pieces of information that we already have. We're removing that, but we don't want them to know about anything. Everything is considered too critical when it comes to Black history or just Black people being a part of the story at all. So all they know is Martin Luther King. Why? Because that was something that was, again, white folks made palatable with the I have a dream and saying that white folks and Black folks will one day come together. That sounded good, but they don't want to talk about the rest of it. They don't want to talk about the rest of it. So
I have a friend.
Can I just? Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I just wanted to say very quickly, just a point of clarification, because it's kind of a pet peeve of mine, the way the narrative has been told around. Critical race theory is not now, nor has it ever been taught in any way whatsoever in any school, certainly 12th grade or below. So even the claim that it has a specific definition. It has a specific approach. It is specific to race and the legal structure in particular. So it's not taught. So what they're upset about, to Rebecca's point, is anything that is critical of whiteness and white supremacy, and certainly critical of capitalism, is then deemed under this umbrella of critical race theory that is easily distilled and disseminated like any other marketing campaign, but has no basis in reality or fact or specificity. So, I mean, anyways, that's all I wanted to just quickly point out.
And that's a whole lot to say, Professor. So thank you again. That's a whole lot to say.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us and going a little bit overtime for us. We are going to do this at least once a month, Free 'em All Fridays. I am keeping an eye on your numbers over there. Y'all are doing great work over there. Shout out to
we're looking to bring you on.
Likewise.
Yeah.
Hey, let me know. I'll come in.
Y'all say that all that's so Black of you guys to do all the time. Y'all come here because we be like, we gonna hang out. Just hit me up.
No.
All right. And we never ever
call me.
But on the real, I think that we should definitely do a mashup once a month. We can talk about that off air, but like a roundtable type thing.
Yeah,
definitely. Thank you. Thanks for having us on, and peace to you and your audience. We really appreciate it and the work that you're doing as well. So thanks a lot. Always,
no doubt.
Hey,
y'all be safe.
Thank you so much.
You too.
Take care, gentlemen.
Peace, everybody.
What's going on with the screen? It's a lot happening.
Hey, Queen.
Of all the titles,
Queen, I gotta tell you, Queen, we might need a little bit more of you, because Ben and I, one moment Ben can have me crack it up where I can't keep it together. The next minute we pulling out pillows. We got the big puffy boxing gloves on, and we got to get at it. So Queen, somewhere, I need you to be closer to us, right in between us, just like that. Because Ben's been misbehaving. I'm gonna just tell you that right now.
Oh, you think I don't see Ben misbehaving? I always see Ben misbehaving. And then you too, Dr. Mack. I see when you be misbehaving too. I do. I see it. I see it. Sometimes I watch it from the background when I'm not on the show, and I'm like, here they go. And then you think Bubba's gonna come and clean it up. Bubba joins in, puts on his best gloves. He puts on his best gloves, and he joins right into that fight. Now, and then David will get in on it too. You would think he would be the referee. Now he in on the fight. All of y'all be doing a lot, but I love to see it. Now, I will say when I do come, I might do a little razzle dazzle, a little sprinkle something in there of a little bit of, come a little razzle dazzle. But and a little kiki, because that's what we need. We need a little kiki in the moment. But I wanted to say shout out to my HBCU before Dr. Ball left, because
Oh yeah.
The number one HBCU in the nation that actually showed me for the first time in my life, in my growing up black in a white suburban area, black and Haitian in a white suburban area, and the first place where I got that from, even though my HBCU teachers in the high school, they would secretly drop little gems in. That's why I went to Florida A&M University, and I learned, and I was really critical of how I was being taught early on, and I'm thankful. I'm so thankful that I unlearned a lot of that stuff. So it's okay to learn, and it's okay to unlearn as well. That's a great part of getting to know yourself.
Quinn, I just want to say, Ben, I absolutely enjoyed the dialogue with Professor Ball and Brother Changa. Just absolutely enriching. So thank you so much for having them on. Just very,
I love them. It made two light-skinned brothers looking white on the screen. Somebody had hair, though. Somebody else was looking like a thumb.
Why you say that about that man? He ain't even on the show.
Ben, right now, Queen is acting up. Now she misbehaving. I heard you, Queen. You know what I mean?
Professor Ball gives me like a Montel, what is it? Montel Williams. Yes, he gives me that, but he's just light skinned.
So since Bubba's not here today, I'll take care of the super chats. Latif gave a $20 super chat and said happy 1 year anniversary to Black Power Media. So I don't know when that official 1 year anniversary for them was, but I think we missed it while they were still on screen. And I don't even think we knew this, so our audience is more on things than we are. But Georgia Fort is streaming the sentencing of Kim Potter on her YouTube channel, so people can. Well, then we're going to
patch right into that, if possible. David, I know you have that set up. We'll bring that to you all. Georgia's doing that, and this is a good place as any.
Georgia for really holding it down with that coverage. She's been doing really, really good. Yesterday, she spoke with the family of Amir Locke, the mother of Amir Locke, with the attorney who's going to be representing them, which is Benjamin Crump. And she had a sit down with them. So if you guys even want to check that out after seeing what she's covering now, it's on her Twitter page. So yeah, she's been doing a really, really good job in this coverage, and I'm grateful for it, because a lot of the information that I'm getting is directly from her.
From her, that's right.
I won't be able to stream today, but we can go. But y'all can go to YouTube.com/Georgia
and get it. Yeah, we'll make sure everybody gets there. Yeah. Well then, folks, it's been a great week. We've had a lot of great guests. We've had a lot of great hours. I'm going to give us 10 minutes back into the rest of our day.
I could do this for hours.
There it is.
Talk to you for hours. All right, y'all. I'm out. It's Friday. I gotta go. I am tired. Job is waiting for me. I'm thinking about taking the day off and going out to brunch, taking myself to brunch, going to get my nails done. I'm out of here, but I love you guys so much, Mina. And
David, the clip I'm talking about, y'all know the guy who does the self-defense videos, but he just doesn't know what the hell he's doing. He's like the guy in the police uniform who's trying to show people how to take down. I don't know. You'll know it when you see it, brother. Back. This brother gave self-defense instructions on how you defend yourself against Will Smith coming to slap you at the Oscars. Let's take a look at it before we get out of here.
I'm done with y'all.
Do we have it, David? Because that's the only one I got to do before we leave.
I'm so done with y'all. So done with y'all.
Detroit, urban survival training. Right now, I'm going to share with you a way to stop violence in a situation where one celebrity wants to approach a stage and attack another celebrity. You simply go towards them with your body, block them, and keep them away. And because you're not facing them, it's hard to say that you are assaulting them or being assaultive or aggressive towards a celebrity. Remember, you don't want celebrities to get hurt. You don't want them to hurt each other. So the way to do that is to create conditions where violence does not occur. Another way to stop it from happening is to turn the elbows of the approaching aggressor and turn them back into the crowd safely without injury. Another thing you can do is take your celebrity that's already on stage, turn their elbow out, and block the other celebrity away. These are intelligent options, which will also decrease the likelihood of one of the celebrities being charged with a crime. Because even if someone says something bad about your wife that offends you, you have no right to use physical force on another person. Violence is the enemy of humanity. Intelligent options increase survivability.
I just can't take him serious. He closed with a really salient point. he dovetailed it really nice, but I just can't take that guy seriously. I can't.
So Pierre, let me be sure. Let me be clear. I've never seen this guy, so I'm assuming that he's serious about all of his efforts here.
Oh, Dr. Mac, there's some other videos you talk about how to defend people, defend yourself with somebody with a gun. And when I tell you the internet moves really fast, where I say they're people showing them doing these moves, and the next thing you know, the background is of them being in heaven.
Let me tell you, Dr. Mac, damn. You know what? I got to be careful because I do assume people are on the internet as much as I am. But this brother right here became famous for giving people bad advice on how to defend yourself against people with weapons. Every move he showed people how to do, how to defend yourself against somebody with a knife or a gun, ends up getting somebody killed. So, and he's just a sensational meme at this point. But yeah, that's how you defend yourself. Oh, man.
I've never seen him before, so.
Okay, I'm gonna send you some clips. When you see it, then you can't really enjoy it as much until after you've seen it. That said, folks, it has been a wonderful week. I want to thank all of our partners, Act TV. I want to thank every one of you who make this possible. Every one of our supporters, our patrons, DJ exclusive patron party tonight, man. I'm looking forward to it. I promise I will be there for more than 10 minutes. I'm gonna get a nap. Dr. Mac, if the rest of the team comes in, we're gonna twerk it like we're gonna throw it down like it's back in Pompano 1994.
We gonna do. Ain't no we in that. You gonna do.
You gonna do right there, man.
Exclusive, play some music, man. So no after party this morning. We're saving it all for the patron party tonight. We'll see everybody tonight. Brother Mac, appreciate you. Georgia Ford, we missed you. Rebecca, we miss you. Everybody else, we'll see you on Monday. Tuesday. What am I saying? Tuesday. We'll see you Tuesday.
Tuesday.
When I get you back, oh yeah.
All right, y'all. We greatly appreciate y'all for joining us this week. It's been a damn good week and a eventful week. My gosh, today. So make sure that y'all tune in this evening. Patron party goes down 9 p.m. this evening. You don't want to miss it. You do still have time to join if you have not already. Patreon.com/like it or not. Patreon.com/the show. You don't want to miss it, y'all. Have your ass there tonight. It's going to be a good time, good time. And your affirmation for this Friday is, even if I fall, I'm able to get up again. Even if I fall, I am able to get up again. Y'all get y'all asses up, man. Let's do it. Get off your ass and work. That's what Kim said. Anyway, y'all gonna be great, man. Love y'all, mean it. We'll see y'all tonight. Not tonight. We'll see y'all Tuesday. Deuces.
When I get you back, oh yeah.
I hate you, David.